and we will be answering those questions at the end of the seminar, and we'll also be opening it up at the end, like I said. So at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Dan, and we're excited to talk about shipping rules. Thank you.
All right. Hi, everybody. This is Dan Coleman. I'm a ShipWorks product specialist here, and as Jessica stated, I'll be doing the webinar today. We're going to be covering shipping rules. Shipping rules, we'll talk first a little bit about shipping rules and what they are, what they can do for us within the ShipWorks program, and then we'll get in there. We'll actually create a few just to kind of demonstrate how they can work for you. So what shipping rules do for you is shipping rules gives you the ability to automate the defaults that are pulled onto the ship order screen when you are shipping. So, for example, maybe you have a certain product, certain SKU that always goes in a particular box size, has a particular weight. You can tell ShipWorks, if we have this product on the order, I want these defaults to pull up. Or perhaps you have a particular price break at a particular weight. So, for example, today we'll be looking at shipping both with the United States Postal Service. Maybe we also ship with UPS, and maybe it's cheaper for any order that weighs more than 4 pounds. We always want those to go UPS because they have a better rate than the United States Postal Service does. So what we're looking at today is how do we tell ShipWorks how to automate those defaults, which providers we pull up by default based upon the conditions that we specify, as well as what defaults pull up on the ship order screen as far as the service that's being used, maybe package sizes. So we're going to look at how to automate that whole thing. So to get started here, I'm just going to kind of point out the criteria that we're going to be using today. So if you're looking at ShipWorks here, I have ShipWorks open on screen. I've got my not shipped orders selected here. I've got 6 of them that I need to ship today. And I have the total weight of the orders I've got listed here so we can look at those. We're going to be using that to create a couple of our rules. We're also going to be using the requested shipping method that the customer selected. So that's the column here for requested shipping. We'll use that information as well to create a couple of rules so that when it says UPS ground, for example, ShipWorks automatically pulls up UPS ground. And we'll also be using particular SKUs. So I have one particular order in here where there is a green hat, and hats have to go in a special box because it is a hat. It's a larger package. So I'm going to tell ShipWorks, well, if it's got a green hat on it, I need it to go automatically. I want the defaults to come up for that particular package size. So we're going to use all of those things kind of in combination here to set up the way I need ShipWorks to default my rules when I am shipping these products in ShipWorks. Now with shipping rules, there's a couple of different things that we do with shipping rules. The first portion with shipping rules is we want to tell ShipWorks, we want to define which shipping provider to use. And then once we've done that, we can go to the provider level and we can define what specific defaults apply to that provider. So we're going to kind of go through that step by step here so it makes a little more sense. So at first, we're going to be looking at selecting which shipping provider do I want to pull up when. So all of our shipping rules in ShipWorks are always going to be created under the Manage tab at the top. So we're going to go to Manage here, and then it's under our shipping settings. So anytime we're dealing with shipping rules, we're setting up our shipping providers, the defaults for those providers, we're always going to go into Manage and then Shipping Settings. Now, the first thing we're going to do, I mentioned a little while ago when I was first talking about what shipping rules can do for us. You'll notice that in my case, I ship with both UPS and with Indicia. So I need to tell ShipWorks when I'm going to use UPS and when I'm going to use Indicia. And in my particular case, of course it may be different for all of you that are joining us today, but in my particular case, it's always cheaper for me to ship via UPS when it's 4 pounds or more. Anything less than 4 pounds, usually I'm going to get a better rate with the United States Postal Service Priority Mail, for example. But once I hit that 4-pound plateau, UPS, I just wanted to automatically pull up UPS for me. So the way we set that is we're going to start on the General tab here. So all of my providers are listed, but under General, this is where I can choose providers, which provider when. I can set up rules to say, hey, ShipWorks, I want UPS to pull up anytime it's 4 pounds or more. Otherwise, I'm going to use Indicia. So by default, right out of the box, when you install ShipWorks, there's really no rule created here. You just get use provider none. Now, if you're only using one shipping provider, you can just go in here and very simply say, hey, always use Indicia. So anytime I create a shipment, I just want you to pull up UPS, or I want you to pull up Indicia, or Stamps.com, or FedEx, or any provider that you may be shipping with ShipWorks. But in my case, I have to be able to define when to use UPS over Indicia. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a rule. So you'll notice we have an Add Rule button here right on screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Add Rule. And you'll notice here that the rule it creates, there's 2 parts to any rule. And this is true both at the general level as well as, and we'll see this in just a few minutes, when we're dealing with the provider level. So what I need to do is I need to tell ShipWorks, if it weighs 4 pounds or more, I want to use UPS. Otherwise, I'm going to have Indicia pull up as my default. So that goes back to the two parts of a shipping rule here. The first part is a filter. We have to create a filter to sort those orders out that weigh 4 pounds or more. Then the second part, we can say use, and we choose the particular provider that we want. So let's take a look at creating that filter first. So where it says if the order is in, what I can do is click the drop down here, and I can choose from a list of filters just so that you're aware of that. If I have filters created over in the filters panel on the left-hand side, I can select from those, but in this case, none of my filters that are pre-canned, that are made for me here, none of them apply. So I'm going to create my own filter, and we call that a quick filter. It just works in the background. It doesn't show up in this list, but it's always working in the background. So anytime you're downloading orders or modifying orders, it's always constantly resorting into those buckets, into those filters, kind of behind the scenes for you, so you don't have to do the work. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and hit create. And what I'll get here is a create the filter editor here. And what I'll do is give it a name. So I'm just going to call this UPS. And let's get specific here. We'll go 4 pounds or greater so that we know what we're doing with it. And then with any filter, anytime you're creating a filter in ShipWorks, filters are done with conditions. And a condition is just a rule or a condition that you specify that has to be met about that order for it to be filtered into that bucket for us. So in this case, I'm really only worried about one thing. I'm just worried about the overall weight of the order of 4 pounds or greater. So I'm going to start by clicking the Add Condition button. And then with any condition, I work left to right. So what I'm going to do here is just go to Order Total, and you'll notice we get a lot of different things we can choose from. We're not going to explore all of those, but in this particular case, what we're going to do is we're going to go down to the order, and we're going to look at the total weight of the order. So now that condition says, look at the order's total weight. And right now it says equals. Well, I can't use equals because it's got to be 4 pounds or greater. So I can also click on equals and I get more choices. So instead of saying equals, I want to go down to and say is greater than or equal to. And then it's 4 pounds. Now this box here for the weight is in fractional pounds. So in this case it would be 4 for 4 pounds. If it were a half pound, for example, instead of putting 8 ounces, I'm going to put 0.5, half a pound. But in this case it's going to be 4 pounds. And I simply say OK. So now what ShipWorks is doing for me is it's sorting on any orders that are 4 pounds or greater, and in my system I have 193 of those orders. Now I'm not worried about whether or not they're shipped. I don't need to add that condition, and the reason for that is I'm choosing the orders I'm going to ship, right? So at the time that it's ready to ship, I'm going to be selecting the orders and shipping them. So all I really care about is that those orders are grouped together. So now I can tell ShipWorks, well, if it's in that group, what I'm going to do is I want to use UPS. So if it is 4 pounds or greater, I automatically want it to pull UPS on the ship order screen. Otherwise, if it's not, if it's less than 4 pounds, then it's going to default to Indicia. So this is how I define which shipping provider to use when. So you'll notice I haven't specified what service to use or any particular package sizes. That's at the provider level, which we're going to look at in a moment. On the General tab, again, all we're doing here is just defining which shipping provider we want to pull up by default. So once we have that set, now we're going to actually look at the actual shipping provider level. And we're going to start to define several things. So I'm going to back out of this screen, and we're going to go back and we're going to look at these orders here. Now the first thing that I'm going to do, and this just pertains to me, your situation may be slightly different here, but just as an example, one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to use this requested shipping column. And I'm going to tell ShipWorks, okay, well, if the customer selects USPS priority mail, I want it to pull up Indicia. We've already defined that because it's going to be less than, this is 1.52 pounds, right? So it's going to pull up Indicia by default. But now I have to tell Indicia, well, if it says USPS priority mail, let's go ahead and select priority mail. And if it says media mail, let's select media mail. And if it says express mail, let's pull up express mail and so on. So that way we don't have to select that each time. So let's take a look. Let's just start with Indicia. Let's start creating some rules for Indicia, and then we'll look at UPS separately. So again, as I stated before, anytime we're dealing with shipping rules, we're going to go to Manage. We're going to go back into Shipping Settings. And then once Shipping Settings comes up, we have to select the provider for which we are creating the rule. So in this case, we're going to be dealing with Indicia. So I am going to select USPS Indicia on the left-hand side. And then our rules are created under Shipments. So let's go to Shipments here. And you'll notice down here at the bottom here, we have a space for additional defaults. So let's talk about this screen for a little bit. You'll notice we have base defaults, and then we have additional defaults. So what I usually do is I will start with my base defaults. And our base defaults are what we would use most often. In my case, I most often use priority mail. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with my base defaults here, and I'm going to set it so that it always pulls up priority mail. So let's go in and do that. So if I click on defaults, and then we go into here, you'll notice that I have the ability to set priority mail as my base default. And then I can also set any other settings here as well. So for example, if I had a particular package size that I use most often, I could enter that here. I can also scroll down. You'll notice there are other options. We're not going to go into each one of these, but the point I'm making here is that we can set any of these as our base default. So for example, if I wanted the order number on the label, I can choose a rubber stamp. And if I scroll down here, there's other options that we can choose. So in my case, really all I'm worried about at this point is I want priority mail to be my default, and I want a rubber stamp to pop in there. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So now, anytime I choose any order, if we just review real quick the way we've set this up, anytime I'm choosing an order that is under 4 pounds, it's going to pull indicia. It then looks to indicia, and it says, what are my defaults? And it's going to pull priority mail. But you'll notice if we go back and we look at the requested shipping here, I don't always want priority mail, right? I have some that are media mail, and I have some that are express mail. So what we have to do is we have to add additional rules that tell ShipWorks if it says media mail or it says express mail, that we want those to be the defaults. So looking at this screen, the way it's going to work here is, again, it's going to start at the top. It's going to apply our base defaults, and then it looks also for any additional rules and applies those rules. So let's create a rule here for media mail. So again, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click Add Rule. And just like we saw on the General tab, there are 2 parts to any rule. Again, we have a filter that we have to specify what conditions have to be met in order for it to apply that particular profile. And the profile is just the set of defaults that we want. So first, let's go in and create our filter. And again, I mentioned this before. You can choose from the filters that you already have created in your filters panel. But in this case, none of those apply. So I'm going to create a quick filter. So just like we did on the General tab, I'm going to click Create. That will give us a filter editor. And my personal habit is just to name them what I'm doing with this particular filter. So I'm just going to call this media mail. And then again, we're going to add a condition here. And keep in mind, again, I mentioned this before, we're not worried about whether or not these orders have been shipped or not. Because again, we're going to be selecting the orders we're going to be shipping. So really all I'm concerned with is that that requested shipping equals USPS media mail. So when I add my condition, again, working left to right, we are going to start on, it always defaults to order total, but if you click on the blue link, you get a lot of options here. And what we're looking at today is the orders requested shipping. So that means look at this column. And now I can specify if the requested shipping equals, and I'll just type it in exactly like it says, media mail. So in this case, if it says USPS media mail, it will filter those. Now here's a little hint for you. If you click on equals, again, you get a lot of other options here. So if you have something, maybe you have multiple sites that you're connected to. Maybe you're shipping both with Amazon and eBay, for example, and maybe one says priority mail, the other one says USPS priority mail, so they're different. One thing you can do, for example, is say contains, and if it contains media mail. So if one says USPS media mail, the other one just says media mail, in this case, it would catch both of those because it contains media mail. So you may have to play with those little rules a little bit. But in my case, I'm only selling on one website. So to make it easy for myself, I am actually just going to keep it with equals, and I'm going to type in exactly what it says. So it equals USPS media mail. So when I click OK, if life treats me well here, what we should get is one order that meets that condition. And we've got that. So now that I've filtered that out and it's in that bucket, I have to tell ShipWorks what to apply. What do I want as my default on that ship order screen? Now remember, I mentioned it starts at the top and it works its way down. So it goes, hey, apply priority, and then it's going to look and go, oh, wait a minute, it says media mail, so I need to change something. So I'm going to go in and create a new profile. So I click on None, and I go to Manage Profile. And this is just the Shipping Profiles Manager here. So I'm going to click New. I'm going to name this one as well, USPS Media Mail. And then all I have to change is which service I want to use. So I'm going to come down and go Media Mail. Because again, what's happening here is it starts at the top, applies all of the profiles, and just overwrites the service. So let's go close, and then we'll choose our media mail. So now if it's media mail, it will change to media mail. So what that will look like for us, if I select an order that says USPS media mail, and I add a new shipment, because it weighs less than 4 pounds, in this case it's a half a pound, what we'll get is it selects indicia for us, and you'll notice that the rule said to change it to media mail. So I don't have to choose those defaults. And if we look, we should also have the rubber stamp for our order number because that's part of our base default. So you can see as we're creating these now, I'm not having to choose media mail every time there's a package with media mail. So let's create another one here. Let's do one more just very, very quickly here. Let's do one for express mail, and then we're going to create one that's a little bit different looking at the weights. So if we go into our shipping settings again, and then we're just going to go back to indicia because we're still dealing with indicia. We go to the shipments tab. We're going to do one more rule, and I'm going to do this quickly. We've already gone through this once, so if we go through, we're going to create one. And this one is going to be for express mail, so USPS express mail. We need to add our condition, right? So we've added our condition, and again, we're just looking at the orders, requested shipping. Now keep in mind, you can look at the order total, total weight, local status. There's a lot of things you can filter on here, but in this example, we're looking at the requested shipping. And in this case, it's USPS express mail. Great, it found a bunch of them in my system, so I know the filter works here because I've got the total number showing here. And again, then I have to create my profile. So we go to Manage Profiles. I add a new profile for Express Mail. And then all we have to do is say, hey, ShipWorks, I want you to choose Express Mail for me. And in this case, I'm just going to do Priority Mail Express, Express Mail. Click OK. And then remember to go back and select that profile you just made. And so what it should look like if I go to Express Mail and I load it onto the ship order screen, it's going to go to indicia and it pulls Express Mail for me by default. All right, so we've done a couple there with the requested shipping method. Let's change it up just a little bit here. I had mentioned at the beginning of this just to look at these rules a little differently at something that you may be able to do. One of my products is a hat, and it always goes in a different package. So if it says green hat here, I've got a SKU that's always the same, GRH-1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a filter using the SKU just to give you an example of how that might work. So we're going to, instead of using the requested shipping method, we are going to use the SKU. And what we're going to do is have it pull in a particular package size for me. So it will go to priority mail, but we need to tell it instead of using blank, I know it's going to go in a box that's a square box. It's going to be 8 inches by 8 inches by 8 inches. So what that would look like, again, the same place here. We're going to go back to Manage Shipping Settings. We're still dealing with indicia here. It's going to go United States Postal Service. And again, I had stated before, it's going to be on the Shipments tab. Now we're going to add another rule here. And in this case, I am going to create a filter for my green hat SKU. So let's call this hats. I'm going to add a condition. But now we have to change it up. Here's where it gets a little bit different. So instead of looking at the order level, we're actually going to have to look at the item, right? So what I can do is I can come down here to for any item. So I'm telling ShipWorks, okay, look at the items on the order here. And then I can add another condition. And you'll notice it defaults to item SKU. But when you're looking at the item level, you can do it on the SKU, the description, the code, the name, the ISBN if you're selling books, for example, so on and so forth. I'm interested in the SKU number at this point. So I'm telling ShipWorks if the item SKU equals GRH-1, I need to filter that order out. Now keep in mind, you can also do a whole list. I'm not going to go too in-depth in filters here. We have another webinar that we've done on that. But if you do have a multiple hats, for example, I could say any of the following, and I could add multiple SKUs here. And it says if it's any of the following SKUs, sort those out for me. But in my case, for this example, I'm just going to do the one. Okay, it found that order. So again, remember, it starts at the top. It works its way down. So it's going to apply priority mail here. It does not meet rule number 1. It skips it. It does not meet rule number 2. It skips it. But it does meet rule number 3. So with rule number 3, I'm going to create a profile for my hats. And all I need to do is tell it that I want it to go in a package that is 8 by 8 by 8. So let's click OK. We've got to remember to choose our profile. So now if life treats me well, and I choose the order that is green hats, and I load it onto the ship order screen. It will choose Indicia. Remember, my base default is priority, but you'll notice because I told it to, now because it's a hat, it automatically entered my box size as well. So anytime I'm shipping anything with a hat, now I don't have to choose my package size either. All right, so there's 3 good examples of rules there. We're going to do one more just so that we can look at one based upon the weight because we haven't done that yet. So I'm going to stick in this case with Indicia again, and the reason I'm doing that is I want to show it kind of from a different angle. I had mentioned before that anything that is 4 pounds or greater needs to go via UPS. Well, here's the catch. What you'll notice is the requested shipping is United States Postal Service Priority Mail. I'm going to overwrite that. So what I'm going to say, I've already told ShipWorks that if it is greater than 4 pounds, I want you to choose UPS. So what we want to be sure of is that our UPS defaults are correct. In this case, I want it to go via UPS ground. So let's take a real quick look at setting up, just like we did for Indicia, we want to take a look at the UPS provider and make sure those defaults are set so that it will pull up UPS ground for me. So again, the same place I'm going to go, back to Manage. I'm going to go back into Shipping Settings, but this time instead of choosing Indicia, I'm going to choose UPS because, again, keep in mind that they're specific to the provider. So let's go into UPS, and again, it's on the Shipments tab, and here's my base defaults for UPS. So I want to make sure that the service that I have selected is ground. And keep in mind, again, for UPS, you have a whole list of different defaults that you can set here. So for example, if you ship with UPS and I wanted to have Quantum View Notify turned on, let's go ahead and turn that on, and we'll just make sure that that applies when we select it here. So let's go ahead and click OK. So that's our base default here. So remember, as a general, just to review here, what should be happening if we go back to the general level. Remember, I told ShipWorks that if it's 4 pounds or greater, regardless of what the requested shipping method says, I want UPS to pull up as my default provider. So in the case of the top order here, even though it says USPS Priority Mail, it's cheaper for me to send it via UPS. So since it's 7.5 pounds, I'm going to have UPS pull up. And I told UPS that my default is ground and that we have Quantum View Notify turned on. So let's test it here. Let's make sure we get UPS. Let's make sure that when it pulls UPS, we get ground and that our Quantum View Notify turns on. So if we close out and I select that order and I add a shipment, I'm going to load that onto the ship order screen like I'm getting ready to ship it. We get UPS, we get ground, and because I told my defaults to be Quantum View turned on, it is turned on for me. So that is how we can utilize shipping rules within ShipWorks to automate this process. So we're just going to kind of review one more time, and then I'm going to open the floor to questions here. So we have looked at the requested shipping. We've used a SKU number, and we've used a weight, all to define how ShipWorks pulls those orders onto the ship order screen and what defaults we want set onto the ship order screen. So just a real quick recap, keep in mind that it's always done under Manage Shipping Settings. You want to start on General and make sure that you are selecting which default provider. So again, in our case, we told ShipWorks that if it's 4 pounds or greater, we want UPS. Otherwise, anything under 4 pounds is going to go via Indicia. Once you've defined which providers to use, you can then narrow it down at the provider level. So with UPS, all we've done here is tell it which service we want to utilize. So we told it to use ground by default. We went a step further with Indicia. We told it by default we want to use priority mail. However, if it says in the requested shipping to utilize media mail, it pulls media mail, express mail, and if it's hats, we want a package size of 8 by 8 by 8. So that would be specific to my needs, but keep in mind you can set these rules up a number of different ways to fit in with your particular business and your particular business needs. All right, so I've spent about 25 minutes there going over those shipping rules. I'm going to go ahead and open the floor here to some questions. What you can do, you should have a questions panel available to you. If you'd like to type up your questions there, They will pop up in the questions panel, and I'll be happy to read them as they come in, and we'll just kind of review any questions you have. If you want assistance, I want to mention to you to keep in mind we always have support available to you at our end. You can certainly go to shipworks.com, click on Get Support. There's a knowledge base there for you now. There's articles on shipping rules. There is also a video tutorial available there for you on shipping rules if you'd like to review that. And if those don't answer your questions, of course, you can submit a case to us as well, and we'll get back in touch regarding any questions you have. So I'll give you a couple minutes here. If you have any specific questions, I'll give you a moment to type those questions up. And I'll be happy to answer those as they come in, as they pertain to this. Anyone have any particular questions? We certainly thank you for taking time out of your day and joining us today. All right, so we've got one question that just came in. If you have multiple computers running ShipWorks with multiple users, how can these filters and shipping rules be made global? So the answer to that is the rules are global by default. Here's what I mean by that. If you're running multiple shipping workstations, for example, when you're configuring ShipWorks with multiple PCs, they're all looking at the same database. So when you create a rule, that rule is part of that database. So if you set up the shipping rules like we just did today, if I have 3 other people connecting to my database, let's say 3 of us are all shipping, those rules by default are global. They're part of that database. So any other client machines that are looking at that database have those same base rules there. The same is true of a user. Unless you specifically go into a user and say, I don't want to use those rules are global, not only for the workstations, but also for any user that is logged into the system. We do have a question, and this one comes up a lot here. Any way to create a filter that will select either the quickest transit time or cheapest cost? There is not a way to filter on those. You actually physically have to click the Get Rates button on the ship order screen before we even know what those rates are going to be for any particular provider or what those transit times are going to be. We don't have a way programmatically behind the scenes to click that Get Rates button and get that information and have it default to that. So Matt, to answer your question, at this time there is not a way in ShipWorks to create a filter to do that particular function. No problem. So we've got a question here, free shipping listing downloaded from eBay store, don't have weight. How do we handle that? Well, you may not be able to filter on weight. So with eBay in particular, unless you are using the calculated shipping method of posting your products on eBay, there is not a weight sent to ShipWorks from eBay. So in that case, what you may have to do is not do it based upon weight, but if you have something that's coming into the requested shipping method from eBay, so for example, maybe it says free shipping, or maybe it says priority mail, but if you know what that requested shipping method means to you, it means, hey, this is free shipping, what you would do is create a rule like we just did that says if the requested shipping equals this, then I want to pull up whatever that free shipping method is for you. So maybe whenever it's free shipping to your customer, you send it via first-class mail, you would say, well, if the requested shipping equals priority mail or free shipping or whatever is downloaded into ShipWorks, just set your default then to pull up whatever that method is for free shipping. All right, I don't see any other questions coming in here. I'll give it just another moment. All right, well, keep in mind, again, if you do go out to shipworks.com and you click on Get Support there, we do have a lot of articles available to you there. If you do a search on the topic for shipping rules, you will get articles, as well as there is a video tutorial out there that will guide you step by step through creating these rules. And again, if you do need additional assistance on that, we're always here for you. Just submit a ticket to us, and we'll be happy to reach out to you. I don't see any other questions coming in, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar, but I do want to thank everyone again for taking time out of your busy day. I hope you have a wonderful day. Have a great day. Bye-bye.